Okay. Have everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Opening of our town board meeting this evening, the 20th of November. First item we have is the acceptance from prior meeting minutes dated the 17th of October and the 6th of November 2023. We need a motion and second to approve both meeting minutes. And a second, please.
One second.
All in favor? Aye. And correspondence from Kathleen, please.
I have a resignation from Carrie Lee Carey from her position as alternate on the ZBA effective December 31st. I have a letter of interest from Christopher Ruckdeschel with regard to a opening on the planning board. He would like to be considered for that. There are comments from Paul Ricard with regard to the budget, and comment and question from Fran Heppis with regard to the budget. That's the only correspondence I have.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. At this point, we're going to have a little change in the order of the meeting agenda. We'll move our public comment to the next item as opposed to more previous at the end. So at this point, we're going to open up for public comment from anybody from the public. We do ask you come up to the podium. If you could give us your name and just ask, we do have a full house, if you could try to be brief as to allow anybody that does have an interest to speak time on the floor. So,
3 minutes.
yes, 3 minutes if you could keep to that, please. So at this time, we'll open the public comment at the town board meeting.
I'm Peter Gerbacki. We 88 White Bridge Road. My daughter, my wife, and myself have raised 2 girls here in the town of Mount Hope. We were attracted to this town because it's small and quiet and had the country setting, and we're obviously concerned about the zoning of the Lucy Farm property. And I wanted to see if we explored all the options to potentially keep that agricultural. If we can come up with a buyer, and presuming that difference is going to be short from what the commercial asking price is, could we put it to the vote to the town for some of the, the people from the town of Mount Hope to see if they could pay to keep it agricultural? Is that an option? And have we approached, or do we have any developers who would be interested in putting up 3 to 5 acre homes, here close to the Metro North line and the good schools here of, Minisink Valley. I know a developer down in Long Island who's got property up on Oakland Valley Road, and I'd be willing to reach out to him to see if he would be interested in this parcel of property to put up homes. So we just would like to, we're very concerned about trucks, heavy trucks on our back roads here on 211, and we don't see it as a, sort of a, proximity for off of I-84 or Route 17. So we're worried about losing our small town status. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Helen Gramacki. What I was going to say is that I like this town because it's a small town, and I feel like the history of Otisville is that when you go down Main Street in Otisville, you know everybody. You go in to buy a cup of coffee, you bump into someone you know, and I just love that atmosphere. When you put an Amazon warehouse, you're taking away from that atmosphere, and that's not the culture of Otisville, it doesn't embody it. And so, I would just say to protect the agriculture of Otisville, to keep in mind, country is, that's kind of who we are, and if you take that away, I really wouldn't wanna stay here. Thank you.
First name is Brian, last name is Padilla. Been living here 19 years. Was a cop in Deer Park part-time, and I retired. Was also a cop in Wallkill at the same time. I did work a long time ago with Mount Hope Police. I translated for them, you know, when they had Spanish-speaking people only. If I'm right now looking into if you're gonna do this to sell my house, I have buyers that are interested in it, and if this passes, I will leave. Cause I like the old country style that we have. I go to the hardware store, I know all the people there, I don't go to the big box store. I buy all my local pizza here in the town to support them, and it's just a great place to live. I brought up 2 kids that, both are self-sufficient, have their degrees. My last one's going to culinary school. I only got a year left to 24, and I would like to leave them my house and the property there. If any of them decided to want to stay here and raise their kids. Venice School District's one of the best school districts. I know Brian Monahan really well. I know a lot of other teachers, Mr. Burns, who was a principal, is a good friend of mine. And just to destroy this country setting that we all lived in and we came for would be terrible, to watch tractor trailers go up our roads. And they wouldn't just go up 211 or off Mountain Road. They would go up other different streets because most of them wouldn't know the area. And I've seen it in Deer Park many times when they got lost up in Deer Park looking for a place and get stuck on the roads, and it became a big production. And I just wouldn't want it to happen here. But I'm looking at my other options because I'm gonna watch this closely. And if I see if it goes the other way, I'm gonna post on all the websites on who did this before I leave. And not, if this individual wanted to build a house there, let the man build this house, let him put a road, let him live among us. Because he did have animals there, and he was strung along for 2 years. Currently to someone that told me in the neighborhood that wanted to be anonymous to me. And it would be sad, it would be a sad day for, I don't want to leave, I love this neighborhood. I keep watch over my neighbors. I just met this young man, this is how I found out about it, because you people on the board, yourself, Mr. Jennings, came and asked for my vote. This is why I voted. And I never came to these meetings because I thought you guys were doing a great job. There was no need for me to come here, you know what I mean, with the police department and everything else. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much. If you could just consider keeping it in old time and look to see, like he said, maybe build housing or something else. That's not gonna bring these tractor trailers, box trucks, they're not gonna just come. They're gonna come 24 hours, especially if it's a FedEx, like she said.
Sir, your time's up.
All right, thank you.
Anthony Naleski, 192 White Bridge Road. I sent an email earlier this week in the event that email didn't reach you. I just wanted to preface and get this out here before it does go to vote, and for everybody else in attendance. I'm a resident of White Bridge Road, and I'm compiling this letter in regards to the recent discussion surrounding the rezoning of the current horse farm located in the corner of White Bridge and Route 211. It is my understanding that this parcel of land will be voted on in coming days by the town council and not the general public. A council consisting of elected officials placed in position by the will of the people and on said person's behalf. Before I proceed, I would be remiss if I didn't extend my sincere appreciation for your public service, for pursuing a position that most declined ever to pursue in the first place. As a veteran and public servant myself, I understand the thankless nature of being in the public eye. With that being said, I implore you to revert back to the will of the very people who elected you. A rezoning to allow warehouse square footage increase from 50,000 to 250,000 square feet is not fitting with the town's motto, high and healthful. The healthful upsize of 250,000 square foot warehouse facility in a residential area are few and far between, if in existence at all. The call for an increased size will further increase commercial vehicular traffic and commuter traffic alike. The stress of added tonnage to the roadways, that is White Bridge Road and the surrounding roadways, will incur additional resources to the town in terms of upkeep and maintenance. Undoubtedly, traffic lights will need to be erected, specifically in the Mount Hope Guymard Turnpike section, along with others, I'm sure. The risk to pedestrian traffic will also be increased. Although no public sidewalk exists, the road is utilized by countless families for exercise and leisure alike. Without the current existence of semi-truck traffic on the road, there are still dangers to pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the form of near blind turns closer to the 211 side of White Bridge. I myself live on one of these turns and contend with this issue daily. I cannot imagine adding semi-trucks and other commercial vehicle traffic into the mix. It's worth noting furthermore that there are numerous bridges that will be burdened by the added traffic, and I just ask, are these bridges rated for the increase in gross tonnage? A point not to be missed is that residents understand that the property in question is commercially zoned, although I believe it is also agricultural and residential. We understand potential exists, even without this rezoning, for warehouses to be built. Our issue lies in the allowance of a building 5 times the size of what is currently allowed. White Bridge Road is but one stretch of public roadway. It's not the largest residential road in the town, but I believe it's a good microcosm that represents more than itself. The vast array of diversity on the road, be that religion, culture, income, political views, and yet for all these differences, a shared belief that this is not beneficial to not just the people of White Bridge Road and 211, but the town and people along the logistical corridor as well. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Is this just comment about anything?
Hi, Wayne Dubkowski. I live on White Bridge Road. I've been there 30-some years, and I can't fathom running trailer trucks up and down my street. We have a lot of kids, and school buses, and our street's decent. But getting to it, coming down Mountain Road or up to 11 in our street, it just doesn't make sense to me to have that kind of traffic there. 50,000 square foot warehouse, but a 250,000 square foot warehouse with round the clock operation really doesn't, it's not something I'd like to see happen. Thanks.
Afternoon. Eric Fellinser, live on White Bridge Road. I question if the board did fill out SECRA, State Environmental Quality Review Act for this, and they notified all involved agencies, and if there was a traffic study done, I can't imagine for a project of this size that would have been, I'll say, approved or even understood by the board, because as these folks have said, White Bridge Road is very thin and windy, and I don't think it would be appropriate for tractor trailers. I guess 211's the alternate route for the traffic, and certainly would be quite a bit of traffic for the proposed change from 50,000 to 250,000 square foot zoning, which could be multiplied by many lots, so you're talking, you know, millions of square feet of warehouse space, and that would bring a lot of traffic as far as tractor trailers and delivery vehicles. So I hope all this was considered. If it wasn't, well, it would be a shame. And if the secret process was not followed, I certainly would support it, Article 78. And that's just, it's inappropriate for this community, it's inappropriate for the roads. You know, my wife runs up and down White Bridge Road, and additional traffic would be a shame. Thank you.
Mr. Fellens, a question with SECRA. We did file and fill out the required SECRA forms, as well as a GML 239 for notification to Orange County. Traffic study was not conducted. From our understanding, that would have been appropriate at the planning board level and project specific to the building or occupation of that parcel, not specific to the structure size that was proposed with the proposed local law.
Oh, that's good. I think that, you know, if this is passed by the board, that we'll just have to all come back, so.
Can I ask a question?
When they go through the planning board process, so
Hi, my
you'll
name's,
have another chance.
sorry. Are you done? I'm sorry.
Yes. no,
Okay,
thank you.
I just had a question. So, my name is Amanda Baker, and we have a farm here over by Mill Pond. What happens to our taxes? What happens to the waste if you build a plant? Because let's, you know, a spade, right? It's 250,000 square feet is no joke for anyone. All the jobs that are gonna be here, who are you hiring? Where are they gonna be parking their cars? What happens to the roads? And of course, taxes are a big part of it. What happens if this big warehouse goes up? That gives precedent for other big businesses to come in and get rid of small businesses. What happens if they get into an accident with a truck near one of my animals or near other people's animals? I think that most people here do not want this to be built. In the event that it doesn't get built, what gets built? What happens? I have all these questions, I heard about it recently, and I don't really feel like there's a place where every single one of them will be answered, but all of these are a huge concern of mine. And I know that anybody that I've met, they don't want it. So my questions again are, as a team, as people here in this community, if I have your back and you have my back, both of us have each other's backs. If nobody here wants it, what happens is my question. I know for a fact, I speak for me and him, we don't want it. I didn't move 200 miles away from my family to have this. You know what I mean? Small town, it stays okay. It's okay if it stays small. There's nothing wrong with small. There's nothing wrong with knowing everyone in the area. Growing bigger doesn't mean that it needs to be structurally bigger. There are other things that could be built. I don't know what they are, I don't claim to know what those are, but I do know that nobody here wants it. And a lot of people are worried about what will happen to their areas or where they live. On Mill Pond, I don't want streetlights. Where I came from, there were streetlights. There shouldn't be streetlights, and everybody should be able to be running down their block, running down Finchville, running down Guymar. There shouldn't be this worry that you're gonna get mauled over by a truck. And these people that come in first, it's Amazon. Who's next? It's safety for people in the street, safety for people in the parks. I don't think it's a very good idea. I don't think it's safe. And I really don't wanna deal with the traffic in the morning, so, thank you.
Fran Heppis, I did write a letter. I'm not sure what the procedure is, if I have to make a request for the letter to be read. It's regarding the budget. I'm not sure if there's a separate time for that, or if this time was just for,
No, this would be the appropriate time at public comment. Would you like the letter read?
I would.
By me, or do you want to?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Dear board members, as a resident reviewing the proposed budget, it can be difficult to understand the process used by the town board to determine how some decisions are reached. I think it would be helpful and would alleviate many of the questions and concerns if the residents knew why some outcomes are necessary. It would appear that, and I don't mind being corrected if I'm wrong, our elected officials and board and committee chairs are slated to receive different amounts in the form of increases to their salaries. I am not questioning the fact that they are receiving increases. They all work hard and do a great job for our town, just hoping for an explanation of the different percentages. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Francine Heppes.
So, the raises for employees specific are based on what is proposed in the preliminary budget initially. Then that's worked on by the town board collectively through the budget process to come up with the final increase based on work performance, duration of service in years by the employees here at the town, are the factors that we considered during the budget process for the respective employees given the raise. I know the question was asked to a board member, why one board member may make more money than the other council members. If a town board member is nominated or assigned the duty of deputy supervisor, that duty also includes an additional salary amount. So one board member will reflect an additional salary amount for being the deputy supervisor, which is currently Mr. Furman on my left here, so.
Does that answer your question, Fran?
No, well, that was fine, but, elected officials, too. That's what I was.
Correct, so the same process as well as for duration of service and work performance considerations besides what's presented to us based on their preliminary proposals.
Okay, work performance in, say, like an evaluation, or, I don't understand how you would go about work performance.
So, yes, work performance, so based on how you perform your duties or your tasks assigned.
I think she's saying what's the curriculum, what are the parameters set to determine what's good versus what's bad? What's a good score, what's a bad score, and how?
Well, we don't have a scoring or points-based system in that. It would be based on the work that's run through your respective office, some of our town board members. Obviously, they're attending meetings. We've got committee reports and duties that we all have and share. We check the rental centers and things of that nature. So if, for example, I don't do my rental checks, I don't do my board meetings, would be a lack of work performance. Using me as a hypothetical example, so that's.
I guess I'm still a little confused about how you would compare that if you have two elected officials who are doing their jobs, and how are you determining that one gets more than the other?
So, without going specifically into something specific that I'm guessing you're asking on an individual employee, which we wouldn't discuss in an open environment for personnel, reasons, so. To, I guess, give you the answer you wanna hear, I don't think this is the setting for it, because I'm guessing it's a or an employee specific, not a
No,
process in which the board.
No, it is,
Works on budget.
it's more of a question about the process. Because if you have elected officials and they're doing their jobs and you have no system in place, you're saying it's based on job performance.
Don't you think
So-
the attorney should interject in
So,
this?
thank you, ma'am, I'll ask his advice.
It's ultimately a town board evaluation. I mean, it's the town board is the one empowered to make the budget, and they would be the one to evaluate, what they think the fair compensation for those positions are
So it's
ultimately.
peer reviewed?
Essentially, yes.
Is that for employees and elected officials?
It depends on well, elected officials, yes, it depends for the employees. Those that are covered under a collective bargaining unit are subject to mandatory raises through their contracts. Those that are not, then those are evaluated on a yearly basis in the budget process.
I'm curious about evaluations, though. How do you go about evaluating the employees?
That would ultimately be up to observation and analysis based on that observation by the town board.
Why, ma'am, if.
Or
I could get your
department head, I'm
name,
sorry, as well.
Could we get your name, please, ma'am?
Oh, my name is Myrna McIntosh, and I'm
Thank you.
curious because an evaluation means that there is going to be a conversation about work performance. Am I correct when I say that about an evaluation? And
Oftentimes, yes.
Yes.
Oftentimes, not all the time?
Not necessarily all the time with the conversations. It depends on what the department is requesting as far as that budget goes.
And then you did ask something different and specific to other employees. I'm guessing non-elected employees, department heads would also be part of that equation as a non-elected employee, just to give a different, with a different, if you would, category or classification of employee, is what I picked up from your question or comment. Is that correct?
I'm just stuck on the evaluation process. To me, an evaluation as an employee means that my work performance will be evaluated and graded. And based on that performance and that grade, an increase or not will be determined perhaps by the board. But I don't think that's what's happening.
Well, the grade could, from our perspective, is the pay rate increase. Not a, like I said to the gentleman behind you, I believe Dan was his name, we don't have a point scoring system.
Maybe you should.
I understand that.
Maybe you should, maybe that should be considered. And my name is Amanda.
Peter again, I mean, has the town not been approached by any developers to put up homes on 5-acre properties, luxury homes?
It's not the town's property. It's
Privately
it's
owned.
privately
Okay,
owned, so it's ultimately their decision what to do. And just for those that weren't at the last meeting,
Right.
that are here tonight, from a procedural standpoint, the local law that's proposed simply changes that aspect of the zoning. It doesn't approve a project. Any proposed developer for any lot in any zone still has to go through the planning board process, which is going to do environmental studies, traffic studies, whatever other necessary studies there are to follow New York state law, as well as potentially have to interact with state agencies as to those projects as well. So the change in the law changes the size of potential building that could be constructed there, but the zoning as it exists, the individual could still bring an application for any number of the uses and would still have to go through the same planning board process. So parking spaces, traffic concerns, screening, things like that would all be dealt with at that level. That is not something that this board actually addresses.
Hey, my name is Brian again. Question of why they didn't let the owner who bought the property, when he brought his animals there, why didn't they let him build a house in the road that, in the back, when he wanted to put his house in the back process?
That would be up to the property owner to
Well,
explain.
was-
That wouldn't be anything of the town.
David, that was something that was proposed at the planning board.
And I
which
remember I came to a meeting
was-
for that.
Okay.
And I believe, if memory serves right from the planning board's explanation, the property owner didn't follow through with that process. That was the choice of the property owner,
He decided not to.
not to build, correct?
Did he wanted to mine that land for the minerals that were on it at one point? Because he had a giant backhoe digging up one of the little mountains in the back and he brought it down.
That I don't know of.
Would the
Mining.
building, the inspector would know? If you were to call and find out?
It's possible.
Because I know he wanted to mine that just to take out dirt and everything else at one point. And, the person who actually told me about them not letting them build a house, that the building inspector had strung him along for 2 years. And he's been a resident since he was a kid. He doesn't want to come forward. I wish he would. Just a bit of information, that's all.
Is that the property owner you're talking about?
Yeah, the property owner wanted to build a house. He wanted,
So he's the one that told
yeah,
you
he
this
wanted a
information?
driveway that came out on White Bridge Road.
Is it, Brian,
Further
I'm asking you a
down.
question. Is he the one that told you that information?
No, it was an individual that
Okay,
knows him
that's all I need to
personally.
know. Thank you, that's all I need to know.
Do you have something, sir?
Bill Duquette, Blue Steve, Shapiro, Frank Barone, I'd just like to pick up on what Mr. Bovosa had said. What we're changing here is not the use of the property that's already in the zoning. As of right, that property will fit 8 50,000 square foot warehouses. And all we're doing is, we're not increasing the square feet, we're just saying we're gonna group those together. And we have the project engineer here. Would you like him to come back up and show his schematic?
You could if you have that.
Ross,
available.
please. So we're not increasing the square feet on the property, we're just being combined into small, larger buildings, so we have less buildings on the property.
While he is speaking, I need everyone to be quiet.
And we'll show you also how this will allow, the bigger buildings allow it to be pulled back from the road, to be more screening. And again, anything to do with traffic, noise, things like that, that's on the planning board level. And if it's going to be a burden on the traffic, project can be approved.
My name is Mr. Brown.
Duquette.
Oh, we're gonna hear from him. Oh, okay.
Christine Shapiro,
Engineering firm is
Engineering Properties.
Good evening, Ross Swinglovitz, Engineering and Surveying Properties, here on behalf of the applicant. So as Bill had mentioned, we had made a brief presentation before, but a lot of people weren't here, and there was a lot of questions. So the town went through a master plan process recently, a rezoning, has zoned this property to allow warehouses. So we did an original plan based on the town zoning, which is a maximum of 50,000 square feet. We figured we could fit 3 on this side and 5 on that side, so 150,000 square feet here, 250 on this side of the property. Concern was that that's a little bit busy, but that is what the zoning permits currently. What we asked is that instead of doing multiple buildings, which actually have more cars, more traffic, is that if we could group those, not increase any square footage into 2 buildings, 150,000 square feet on this side, 250 on that side. Much bigger green spaces. We offered that the green space would be, could be conserved. So we have a significant green space buffer here and at the corner, as well as behind the building, leaving the center of the property open. That was the thought process and why we thought this was a much better plan than the 50,000 square foot.
So one could say it's almost a deterrent to have 8 50,000 square foot size warehouses instead of 2 larger ones to consolidate costs for electric, plumbing, excavation, and everything else. So it'd be a possible deterrent for a would-be buyer to go for a lot that's only zoned for 50,000 instead of 2 larger ones.
Would be a possibility. Could it
So
speak-
realistically, that would be a logistical jump, right?
What about the marshes that are around the property when it rains?
Yeah, there's a wetland area through the side of the court.
That fills up. Did they do environmental study on it?
That'd be done part of the planning board process. This is just changing, again, not changing the use is the same, just allowing it to be in 2 larger buildings instead of 8 buildings. That would all have to be reviewed, you know, any of the wetland areas, traffic, so forth.
How many total acres was that?
72.
72? 72, 73?
73 acres, yeah.
73.
Excuse me, is there a height difference between the 8 and the 2?
No. Height of the buildings would be the same.
And one other question is, do you work for the current owner or a potential someone else coming in? your
Correct.
engineering firm, they're designing that? Or is it the
Current owner.
Current owner.
Thank you.
Diane has a question.
Oh, Diane, I'm sorry.
It is a question too, because apparently I was confused. The current zoning allows for 50,000 square feet, correct? Numerous buildings of that size on a single parcel, or a single 50,000 square foot warehouse? No, I'm asking what the current zoning
The
says.
current zoning the bottom one
I'm
there?
asking the attorney, sorry.
And I'm telling
Yeah,
you-
right now, it's silent as to the issue of number of warehouses that can be on the site.
So
there
you can
would
have
potentially be-
multiple
Correct,
buildings on one site.
correct.
So if you increase it from 50,000 to 250,000, you could have 3 or 4 250,000 square foot buildings. Because it is not restricting the number of buildings, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
That's all I wanted to say.
One of the things we discussed with this board that we went into an agreement regarding the conservation of that and the size of the building so that it was consistent, so this wasn't a shell game, we don't want anybody to say, we're coming in here for this and we're changing it later. We're committed to this arrangement because it's supported by that.
Just to piggyback off that, last meeting, it was stated that there would only be one 250,000 square foot facility instead of the 850,000 smaller ones. I thought I heard that, I watched the video again, like, that's what was said, today with this schematic coming out. And thank you for clarifying that, ma'am. But it does go to show that the number of buildings themselves is not restricted. It is just increasing the footprint of basic buildings.
Yes, the proposal is for changing the footprint of the building size, correct. That was the sole purpose of the amendment to the local law.
Also, kind of to go along with Diane's question as well, they would still have to meet all of the other bulk requirements of that property and the zoning district. So the zoning district only allows 30% lot coverage to be improved. So regardless of the size of the buildings, there's only so much of the property that can actually be developed. And the rest of it has to be preserved. But I wanted to let you know that's
Yes.
what
Now, with the 30% coverage, does that include parking areas and
Yes.
all of that as well, not just the buildings?
Correct.
Okay. As I said, I was under total misconception from the last meeting. I thought I was hearing, and I think you thought the same thing, that it was, you could only have one 50,000 square foot building. And because they were looking to have a lot more than that what's now on the floor was what I went away thinking was being proposed. But I'm even more concerned about the fact that there is no limitation to the number of buildings. I think that might be something that the board would want to consider in addition to the 30% coverage. Because again, I realize that everything that comes to the planning board is gonna have to go through the whole process. They're gonna have to have environmental studies, they're gonna have to have the traffic studies. But the board can step back and look at the big picture. And if you really can sit there and say to yourselves, we believe that, what was the total there? 400,000 square foot? 400,000
Either way-
square
either
foot
way.
of warehousing can be supported on the roads that we have. I don't know how you can say that that's a possibility. And without doing any kind of studies, you can look into it, but I think that's something that really needs to be considered before you make that decision. That's it.
I think that goes back to the traffic is a planning board function.
Yes, I realize that.
So if the roads can't handle it, then either the planning board says you have to put in a new road and bring it up to the proper spec, or they deny the application.
One question, Brian. What would be better? I mean, isn't it better just to make two buildings, because it's, you can stick more stuff in there? Or to make smaller individual buildings, which you can't put as much stuff in there? So you're proposing something that's bigger, that you can put more stuff in, and have little warehouses where they might not wanna build. Right? That makes sense, right? Why would they wanna build that? That's why they proposed the one on top.
Yeah. 8 times the income.
Yeah. So who would wanna put smaller stuff in there, which you won't be able to put trailers in there? It'll be more like box trucks. So on top, you can do tractor trailers. You have bigger space.
Both
Smaller
would accommodate
building.
tractor trailers, they're both warehouses.
But-
They're both the same use, we'll just have multiple users in this one, it's 2 users in this one.
I have a
Yeah, but
question.
with that, you have more bathrooms, more, water, more lights, more electricity, and then twice the bill. But if you build something bigger, it cuts the cost in half in the long run.
For the building.
I mean, that's all I got to say. I could be wrong. I'm not an engineer. I'm just a retired cop. So this is what I see.
My question is, I don't know whose plans these are, who ends up is owning these buildings, but if the 2 are approved, kind of
Ma'am.
like what Diane said,
Ma'am.
will it be capped?
Can you just state your
Will
name
it,
again?
well, how many more buildings can go up, and if they're approved and other people wanna sell, where, is there like a limitation to how many buildings can be built? Will that even be proposed? If this were to be approved, are you capped at 2? What if that's not enough in 5 years? What's your 10-year plan? How many more buildings will go up? What if you wanna build on top? Like where, air rights, things like that, like what, how far does it go?
Yeah, I think we've agreed that this is the maximum square footage and the maximum size would be 250.
Of one of the buildings.
I think also to answer your question, if in fact they were to receive a planning board approval and decided 10 years after that they wanted to change the layout, they then have to go back to the board to start the process all over again. So they don't, you know, just hypothetically speaking, and I'm not saying it is, let's say this is the plan that gets approved, they can't just start building extra buildings because they want to. They would still have to go through the process again to update that plan.
Unless it gets rezoned.
Well, either way, a planning board approval, if you're changing the nature of the approval, would have to go back.
Over here.
So,
Carrie?
I just have a question. I know you had said you were agreeing to do 2 buildings on this property, but the law change would affect all of B1 parcels in the town,
Correct.
correct? Because there's other property on the other side of the town, so that wouldn't encompass any restrictions in the other areas?
No, the proposal would be for the entire zoning district, that's correct,
There's only 2 parcels, I think, that are zoned.
that are undeveloped at this time.
Where are they?
Which is the other side, which is,
So the B1 district is mostly the 211 corridor from the White Bridge intersection through approximately where Dollar General is roughly, and there's one parcel on Old Mountain Road near the town historical house as you're going out of town towards Mannequin.
Out of it.
Correct.
Just one question. If you don't pass this law, then they would have to build 8 buildings.
They would have to make an application to the planning board for that proposal, correct?
Yes. So wouldn't that kind of be a deterrent to them building at all? They're not gonna wanna build 8 separate buildings.
That's
As opposed to
possible, but
this.
that's up to the
Yeah, up to the.
property owner to-
Yeah. But that's my, you know, if we don't let them aggregate that, it would kind of slow down their process, I would think.
Hi, Eric Fellenzer. Just one question. So if it's zoned, isn't that per lot, the one building per lot, or you're allowed multiple buildings per lot? Wouldn't it have to be subdivided to do this?
Because council said it's not.
It's silent to that now, so there's no restriction on multiple buildings if they're approved by the planning board.
So, doesn't quite make sense to me, but. So you could put multiple, so on this property, you could put multiple caretakers' houses, multiple anything, as long as it meets the requirements? And if this is done for this specific property, as she, sorry, someone else mentioned, why is it not being, why are we doing it for all of B1 instead of for this particular lot.
is-
If you're gonna change your zone, if you're gonna change the zoning, why don't you make this its own zone so that we're not talking about this?
It is for the entire zone, it's not
I know,
parcel specific.
yeah, so you're speaking of this as a specific parcel, but you're increasing the zoning,
For the entire zoning district.
yeah,
The square footage number from 50 to 250 is for the entire district, not specific to the parcel within the district.
correct. So, again, you can have more of these monsters. And this is a conditional use, subject to the issuance of a special permit by the planning board, correct?
Yes, they'd have to go through the entire planning board process.
Okay. So I guess I asked the board this question, and you don't have to answer it, but if you lived on White Bridge Road, would you think that's appropriate?
I would just say with the 8 little houses.
Question, sir?
My name's Sal Rivera. I live 211 White Bridge Road. I wouldn't want that on my road because trucks coming down. My son has very bad asthma. I love the community. I love the area up here. And I feel like having trucks, more cars parked, it's just going to, air quality conditions could go down. That's a lot of my concern. Like having the freedom to have my dogs outside. I got to worry about them with the trucks now. If that happens, more vehicles passing through. It's definitely a big concern, and it makes me afraid that, this is what I moved here for, this kind of country feel, and it makes me feel like, I guess we'll be considering having to leave again, somewhere else. It's unfortunate.
Mary?
Yes, Dave, on this proposal where you have the two buildings there, given the acreage and you have to reserve 30%, could they then add another, is there enough acreage to add a third one? If they decide to do it down the road or as they get to planning, is there enough acreage to change that if they wanted to do an add 3?
Offhand, I don't know. I don't know what the dimensions are of the lot disturbance as a percentage of the property. It sounded to me like Ross had said that this is basically at the 30%, as far as the lot coverage goes. But if they have the room for it, if it doesn't take up that full 30%, there's the potential they can come back later and go through the process again.
Or they could just change if there is enough, right, and just change it from 2 and add on, because people do change their plans as they kind of move along a little bit.
Well, if you're saying that might the plans change during the planning board process, then certainly that's a possibility. But that wouldn't be known as to whether or not that would happen until the process is underway.
Right, it's just sometimes you're talking about
Yeah.
2, and when you get a little bit closer, it could really be 3, right, maybe.
It could, if the applicant and the board find that that's the best layout or something similar, that's a possibility.
Okay.
Diane?
I think the overall big picture is getting a little bit lost here. And thank you, Mr. Fellinger, for pointing it out and getting my head going here. A few people have mentioned the fact that this will apply to the entire district.
Correct.
So we can't really, or the board can't, not us, but the board can't really focus only on this parcel. Because you have to look at the overall impact where all of the parcels that you mentioned wanting to do the same thing. Mr. Fellinger mentioned, had there been any consideration, since this is the only applicant wanting to do this, to just rezoning that? And I am not in favor of spot zoning. I would be like outraged if the board considered that. But that is what the Zoning Board of Appeals is for. They, by current law, you're telling me, they could have 250,000 square feet by putting in all these little buildings. That is not it's not what they want to do. They could make some really good rational reasons for that. So without changing the law, they still have the ability to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to try to get a waiver from that restriction. I just wanted to point out that there are other avenues without changing the law.
comment at this time.
Yeah, I'll give you a break. Thank you for the other night, you know, with the informational meeting. But there was two questions I wanted to ask. Who was Jason, the engineer, was he part of the original team to design the plant?
I would say no. Jason had worked with two different firms at most for the last 10 years with the town, so I would say most likely not, but he could verify that for you.
Okay. And when we went and we checked out the sewers and all that, was he the engineer for that, or was there somebody else that looked at that too? As far as like the seepage in there with the water?
It was across two firms. At one point, the scoping was done prior to 2013.
You're talking about the cameras?
Yes, cameras in the internal pipes. Possibility with the prior firm was, from Wurtsboro, Winter.
He's the original engineer then was dealing with the plant.
That I don't know, I can't speak for that, that was.
Yeah,
He was the town engineer when the plant
When the
was built,
scoping was done.
but he wasn't the engineer of the plant.
Correct. And then Jason did have some work with the two firms he was with over that 10-year span with other testing and review work that was done, or design work from 2013 to current.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, did you have something in the back?
My name's Paul Bart. I live the closest to this project going on right now. I live across the street. So, for the town, leave it as it is. It got changed in what, 2019, I believe you said last meeting?
Correct.
Let them come to the board, let them do whatever they gotta do to pursue the two buildings. At this point, which direction do we, as the general public, have to go to change the whole zoning for this, so this can never happen again? What avenue do we have to go?
It would be a similar process to where we are now. We would have the introduction and the proposal of the local law to amend the zoning to a proposed, Mr. Barth's proposal, if we'll use for the hypothetical part. We'd have a public hearing, and then the town could take action, if so chose, the town board on that proposal.
So we come in front of you, not the planning board, not anyone in front of
For
you?
zoning district use, similar to this.
So we can propose to go back to agricultural and then let somebody else go from there. Okay, thank you. But I would leave it as the 8 buildings at this point, since that's how it was approved, and let them go for the 2 buildings if they wanted.
I second that.
Just have one last question. Okay.
I still don't understand, it says conditional use, subject to issuance by special permit by the planning board. Excuse me. It says warehouse, 50,000 square foot or less. It doesn't say warehouses. It says research institute or laboratory. It doesn't say laboratories. It says public utility plant, structure, or storage. Non-nuisance industry, doesn't say industries. Wholesale business, doesn't say businesses. I don't know where the multiple 50,000, even the multiple 50,000 came from. I don't, it's not clear to me without a subdivision of the property that they can even do that. I don't know, it just really don't, and even if it's a veterans or veterinarian office or animal hospital, it doesn't say you can have multiple veterinary hospitals on one parcel, so very confused on that, how that interpretation came about. I don't know, you have any input on that?
I don't, that's something to be hashed out during the planning board process.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that that's meets the zoning, which I don't think it
That would be
does,
incorrect.
based on those
Dave,
words and.
I think the question you're asking is how the interpretation would be singular versus plural of the description.
Yeah.
So, David, what would be the? what would be
Well,
the
it's defining
deciding-
it as a warehouse use, it's not defining it as a single warehouse building. That's where the interpretation comes from.
I think that's a
So
stretch at best.
taking, for instance, I believe you said the hospitals or the animal boarding homes. One use can have multiple buildings as part of that use.
David, just for my clarification, so would that be similar to somebody that has a home and builds a detached garage and builds a detached shed?
Yes.
Is that what your description is, that it's a residential use, but there's 3 different buildings on the property?
Yes, that is a fair
Does-
analogy.
Does that make any?
Seems like a stretch, man, but, you know, maybe I'm wrong.
Just one more question, I promise, only because of what you just said. So then, in a residential district, you could build multiple homes on the parcel so long as it met the acreage?
No.
No?
Because there's specific rules about that in the residential districts. If you're going to have more than, it depends on, one, the type of unit, are we talking about a multifamily home? But otherwise, if you wanted to have 2 separate, single-family dwellings on a property, it would have to be subdividable to meet the bulk requirements. That's the restriction that exists in the zoning.
So in the business district, the bulk requirement is not per building the way it is in the residential?
Correct, the residential is specific as to that, yes. As to the scenario that you just gave, the zoning is specific to that.
Okay?
Mhm.
But not in the business district?
Correct. And a lot of that will be based on the application and the interpretation of the application. You know, as mentioned, there's a limited non-nuisance industry permitted. If that's some sort of manufacturing plant, then what type of outbuildings would there be? There would be additional buildings for that.
But
So
those
it's
are
not
accessory
subject to
uses,
that.
that's.
No, that could potentially be the part of the primary use. That's what they go to the planning board to determine.
But what's being proposed are 2 totally separate warehousing units, correct?
Correct,
Not
potentially
one.
under the same use, yes.
Just wanna close, sort of, like just a, have a word vomit, I think just everybody's emotions kinda got to, there's a lot of information coming in the last couple of weeks that just kinda came to surface, maybe not, you know, on the board's end, but just in terms of, you know, information dissemination. There's not many resources Mountain Hope residents get from the town. We pay taxes, we don't even have, unless I'm wrong, Sarah, I don't think we have a police department that runs 24 hours. I think at midnight we kick over to state police and sheriff.
Correct.
And we don't, Mountain Hope, we don't have garbage pickup. I go to New Hampton and trailer to and from. I'm okay with all that. I think a lot of people understand, you know, how life existed when we moved here. We're not, like we just mentioned before, we don't have streetlights on the road. Some of us like that, some of us don't, but at the end of the day, we knew that coming here, it is what it is, it's our lifestyle. And I think this is a tremendous upheaval of that lifestyle. And this is something that wasn't here before we were. And I feel like that's rare. Most of the time, you know, there's not much you can do when, you know, you move in, you know, next to a warehouse, next to a factory, above a bar, and then you make a complaint about that establishment that was there before you moved in. This is not that. This is coming after we've settled our lives here. And I just want to end on, if the town sees tax dollars to it, because I'm sure that realistically makes sense, that would be a thing. I just want to remind the town that there's a lot of residents here that really don't ask for much, but we don't get much, and we're okay with that. So the increased revenue that it might bring to the town, I know a lot of us aren't going to see that.
I just had a quick question about the sewer plant. I know the other night you guys talked a little bit about those manhole covers, right?
Yes.
And you put out, I forgot what the amount that you said it would be. roughly you're looking at to take those up?
The, what was to the manhole, if you would, assembly, not just
Right.
the cover of the
Right,
cap, but I
right.
know there was kind of two parts to what we had discussed that. The recent proposal we got last year, was approximately $130,000 for that rehabilitation project for the respective manholes that were identified by the engineering firm. And based on their recommendation for the repair,
Which engineering firm? Was that out to bid, or was that just asking for
no,
an
that
estimate?
was, which Jason's firm, P&D, where Jason works for.
So just an estimate at this point?
Yes, yeah, he had provided the report as to what needed, what areas needed to be rehabilitated or repaired.
Okay.
That report was used to solicit a bid from a contractor.
Okay. And was there any talk about like the plan, or like with doing all those manhole covers, like what would be the plan to kind of take them apart and, what order, or?
Well, each was specific, there was 13 identified manholes for some type of repair, and
Right.
each specific to what each one of the 13 needed.
Okay. So were they looked at specifically to see what each one needed?
Yes.
They were.
Correct. And that's how the firm had come up, Jason and the firm come up with a plan that, say, number one had, X number, number two was more or less, every one of the 13 identified had their own description of, required and recommended repairs.
And you were able to determine that through camera, or just estimating at this point? You're still,
It was
because you're saying each one was a little bit different, right? So how would they know?
between what was done with the camera scoping and actually taking the cover off and looking in, so a visual inspection. So I would say a multi-faceted means to coming up with that report.
Okay. Thank you.
Was that all done on the same street or throughout the whole development?
The whole sewer network of the development.
Hey, Matt, I got a question.
There was one behind you, first switch, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Then we'll-
Can you orient that to me? Where's White Bridge, where's 211? On that picture.
Mr. Linowitz, could you identify where White Bridge and 211 are on your map?
White Bridge here, 211 is here.
Now, if you get their approval for the two buildings, can anything else be built there? Hence, I'll go somewhere different than everybody else. Can you put high-density housing there?
The zoning district doesn't allow for residential homes to be built there.
But if they get their approval for this, it's not gonna end up like Bloomingburg and Palm Tree.
So
This is what they do, this is what these people do. They get their approval, and then all of a sudden they get, look at Bloomingburg. They get one of those 100 houses and.
Mr. Redmond, the zoning district doesn't allow for residential homes to be built. So I guess if hypothetically, if they were built by somebody, a builder, then there would be quite a process to build it, I would say, illegally, by not following zoning requirements. Is that the correct description, David?
Correct, that use isn't permitted in the zone, so if hypothetically this were to get approved, and someone were to try to change the use to that, any potential change of use to the property has to go back to the planning board, and frankly, it's simply not permitted, so it would be a non-starter even with the planning board.
Do you know how far away, like footage-wise, that, like, building is away from White Bridge Road? Like, if you're, like, how far is that space? Like, distance-wise?
About 150 feet. There's a 75-yard setback. 75-foot front yard setback along the whole thing. We showed buffering along there. The building is about 150 feet back.
What about from 211 on that corner?
So obviously
The
way
corner of
back
the building.
here, that's probably, that front corner is probably about 150 feet as well. Here's the barn, just to give some people along the road. Definitely sits in the back.
So I just want to be clear again, so with the town, it's not zoned, that we could not, there would be no residential homes on like 5-acre parcels. I mean, could it ever be rezoned for that, or
There's a potential. Like the question Mr. Barth asked about changing it back to an agricultural use.
Right.
They would have to go through a process
Right.
that we're
Okay.
currently in to get to that point.
Oh, we'll spearhead that, Paul.
No problem.
Well,
Question, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe the solar panels that went up in the area, the solar farms, you got X amount of money up front in case those solar farms got put away or not used anymore, you had to get money to take them off property?
There's a decommissioning bond that's posted with the town, yes.
Okay, can you do something the same with the warehouses? Cause I've known many warehouses that have been put up in 10 years disappeared, and they're sitting in a building doing nothing.
That would ultimately be up to the planning board to determine. Typically, they would have, you know, let's say they go through the improvement and DOT says you have to expand the road or upgrade the road. There would be road bonds to make sure that that's taking place. There'd be performance bonds during the construction of the project. So once they're up, essentially there would be no bonding further. Solar tends to be a slightly different process simply because of the nature of what's being built rather than a closed facility like this. But performance bonds and road bonds would definitely be needed.
Okay.
I have a question. Since the solar farm went up down my block, my taxes have gone up. Would our taxes go up if this were to become zoned as commercial? Like, how does that affect?
That I don't know.
Is that the planning board also?
That would have to be with the assessor, but this property, if developed from, I mean, it's currently vacant other than the prior agricultural use, that would then see a commercial rating as far as their assessment goes, and their tax bill would be sizable.
How, historically though, how would that affect everybody else in the area? Like, in your expert, like, opinion, how does that work? 'Cause I don't know.
That, it ultimately depends on what happens. Generally, there wouldn't be any type of abnormal increase or anything like that. So in some cases, depending on how projects are assessed, there may be a decrease in the residential, but it's kind of impossible to say until something like that was actually built and assessed.
Okay.
Generally, commercial projects bring in more taxes than the services they use.
Would that make
So the
my
over-
taxes go down?
Yes.
potentially.
Or not go up as much.
Oh, right.
The government is spending.
It'll be tax, it'll be in lieu of taxes, you ain't gonna see dime on this thing.
Would most of the traffic going in and out be going off of 211?
So the main access for both is on 211. This is only an emergency access only, so there wouldn't be any access on the White Bridge. Emergency only, just for safety.
Where would the trucks be coming from? Off of 84, 17, both?
Potentially.
Because isn't 209 allowed, you allow traffic on 209?
I mean, there'll be a whole traffic study, you know, if this got to the planning board, where they would go through
That's
that
planning board
process.
thing?
Yeah.
That's the planning board?
If we could keep to one at a time for comments, please, folks. Are there any further comments or public comment? Ms. Marizio?
Angel Marizio. I'm going to just begin with Ingracia Road as an example. It's become a shortcut. It used to be a quiet country road, and now it's very highly traveled by trucks coming, you know, used as a shortcut between one end of town to the other, back to 211. I want to ask, I watched a documentary on TV stating about such as this. It's a small town, small place, generally speaking, and the industry came a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit in another spot nearby, and then all of a sudden, this little town became an industrial place. We don't want that to happen. A big question for me is that I've been told, I don't know that it's so, that these companies or whoever's running these places as soon as they get in and settle, they can ask to be tax exempt.
Pilot agreements used to be a practice of the past to try to attract business, but at this point, the town board has not been approached about a pilot agreement for this. I don't believe they would entertain that approach, but they don't get any de facto tax break just because they located in Mount Hope.
I mean, but it's possible they can ask and they can receive, right?
They can ask and they can receive, yes.
Oh, that's a possibility.
The thing, excuse me, with the pilot agreement, it starts at the current rate. It's just the improvements that are phased in over time. So you're not losing money with a pilot agreement, it just phases in the value of the project over time.
So to add to that, you get more traffic and it's the same tax. Is that clear?
Now, well, the zoning and planning boards, I know they've been in existence for a long, long time, anyway. However, when we're approaching this day and age and we're looking at what we're looking at, I'm asking if any members of the zoning board or planning boards are any kind of professionals at all, or if they have any typical training in any of this kind of business, because it's becoming an ordinary citizen making big decisions affecting a lot of people. And that's just a big question in my mind now. And as I stated in the last meeting, that I don't feel that this is a positive thing for the town of Mount Hope, because I feel this larger property should be put to better use for small businesses or individual housing and such, to benefit the people of the town. Someone on the town board last time said that the advantage to the town of Mount Hope for this project was tax dollars, period, and that's not acceptable to me. You know, taxes need to be paid, everybody pays them, but I don't think in this case it's advantageous to the town. And the last question is, are both of those buildings 250,000 feet each? No, they don't look it.
One's
One is
150, one's 250.
And one's 2. And what became of the 8 smaller ones?
This is.
They're still there.
They're still possible to,
They're still there if the zoning, if the amendment doesn't pass, then this is what we would present.
that's already set, I mean, it's allowed. No.
Yes, it's allowed, but it's still gotta go to the planning board.
Right.
But it doesn't require any town board action, any zoning changes.
And when is the next planning board meeting?
The third Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
It would be in December. We already had the meeting this month on the 15th.
Okay, so they had a meeting between the last town board meeting and today?
Correct.
So what did they come up with then?
It was not on the
There's
agenda.
there's no proposal at the planning board for this.
So what are these people waiting for to approach the planning board?
They're waiting for a decision on if the zoning will change to let the building size go from 50,000 square feet to 250,000 square feet.
Okay.
And to your point, or question or comment on the zoning and planning members, they are, continuing education is offered through Orange County Planning and other state resources that the members partake in. And I don't know if it was specific, but you kind of a question more so on education. I thought background, we do have a very good diversification of members on those respective boards with their professional, private sector involvement, whether they were in construction or education, a good variety of people from the town that have I would say, a good understanding. It's not all construction workers. It's a very good group of people on the two respective boards that, work hard and diligently on the projects they're presented.
And to supplement that, all planning board and zoning board members are required to complete a certain number of hours of classes every single year to continue to qualify for that position. Additionally, both of those boards are empowered to hire any necessary consultants that they think they would need in order to review. So at planning board meetings, there's legal counsel, the engineer is present. If for a project like this, the planning board decided that they needed a traffic study, a separate environmental study, they could hire consultants to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation project. At this point, we'll close the public comment period at the meeting, and we'll move on to our committee reports. We'll start with our board member reports from Amanda, please.
I just wanted to extend a thank you to the village for co-hosting the Veterans Day ceremony, as well as the highway department for decorating the truck for the ceremony. It was unfortunate we couldn't do the parade this year due to the bridge, but I think all in all, it was still a respectful ceremony.
Thank you, Amanda. And Chris?
I just got two things. There will be a sensory-friendly photo for Mr. and Mrs. Claus. If you don't know, children with autism don't react well with big crowds or noises. I know Lance and Davern Village is involved with this, but they're going to have that on Saturday, December 16th at the Mount Hope Senior Center. You can bring your own camera, and I think it's a great thing. My nephew's autistic, so I can relate to this very well. The other thing is, I just want to remind everybody, tomorrow in the village, the mobile DMV is coming to town. If you have any DMV transactions, it doesn't matter what it is, they can pretty much do everything there. You don't need an appointment. It's from 10 to 3, and it's at Village Hall. The only time that they're closed is when they take lunch from 12 to 1. So it's been pretty successful, and we're trying to keep it that way. We're trying to do it so that every month it's either at Village Hall or it's here at Town Hall. So next month we have it booked here at Town Hall as well. And I don't have any other comment.
All right, thank you, Chris and Jim.
I'm sorry, I do.
Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, I do. Matt and I met with Mike Brock and the residents of Hidden Valley. There was a lot of, I think, uninformed residents, and we went over a lot of things with Hidden Valley. I think it was pretty positive. We're gonna come back probably after the first year, maybe in March or April, and have another meeting, so that they can understand where things are coming from and why things are the way they are. I feel better about it. Mike, I hope you feel better about it.
Feel better about it. Still a lot of questions, so
Yep.
we'll get it together.
So, being open and transparent, that's why we did that meeting. So, I wanna thank Amanda, because we were trying to do a mailer and realized the post office would not have gotten it to the people's houses until Tuesday, which the meeting was on. So Amanda and I took our Saturday afternoon and we huffed 100 homes and delivered a letter to everyone. So thank you, Amanda, for that. And I'm sorry, that's all I have. Go ahead, Jim.
Billy, Dean, the mayor asked me to say, give the town guys a thank you for assisting with the DPW. So, he said big thank you to those guys for us. They have their Patriot Tree lighting on December 7th at 6 p.m. at the Veterans Park. Refreshments to follow at the Village Hall. Their scheduled board meeting will be that night, 7 p.m. I talked to Dean. He replaced the part in the generator at the youth center, so hopefully that will eliminate that, the heater. Hopefully that'll eliminate that error message. Yeah. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Jim. Just want to thank everybody, like Amanda said, on the Veterans Day ceremony we had. It was well attended. Thank everyone for their involvement with that. The cooperation we've always gotten in the past from the village, use of the park, and their involvement with the ceremony as well. Just another item, I did forget this, the end of October. October was Fire Prevention Month. Just want to recognize our volunteer fire departments. That went to the local schools, elementary schools, and the preschools for the fire prevention education for our students in the community. So thank you to all the volunteers that participated in that. And we'll move to our highway report from Dean, please.
The old barn that we built down at the park is finished. The only thing we're waiting on is 3 overhead doors to be installed. Duchess Overhead Doors is putting them in, they said either next week or with the holiday, possibly the first week of December. And then we will vacate the old dairy barn. But it looks like it's will come in under the $60,000 budget that we had. There'll be a few dollars left over anyway. All our trucks and equipment is ready for winter. We have salt and sand mix. The barn is loaded. We,
I hope you don't get to use it.
No. We ordered our last fuel delivery this morning for the year. And we started doing your siding on your addition out here. I had them do the soffits and trim work up by the roof on both the non-gable ends, I don't know what you call them. I want to get a gutter installer in here as soon as they get done and give us some prices. Because there's a lot of, I don't know if anybody's been around the back when it's raining, there's a lot of water comes off that roof. Picks up the flat roof, and it actually runs in our one garage door out there, so the sooner I get gutters on, the better.
Yeah, it won't be running through. All right.
That's about it. I have nothing else.
All right, thank you, Dean. And who wants the police report from Mike, please?
I don't see any questions. I have the only other question for our Christmas tree lighting. What was the date of that?
Highlights at 11. We're not 16, but we're not settled on anything.
Okay.
Can I ask you one question before we go here? Can we make sure, and we may be doing this already, the residents of Hidden Valley were asking me if officers can drive through the development.
Can't hear you.
The residents of Hidden Valley have asked me if officers drive through the development.
Well, they should be, so
Should
hopefully
be.
they are.
So
But if not,
we
I'll
can
be
make
doing
sure.
it.
We'll follow up on that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. And village report, Mr. Mayor.
The mayor would like to thank you personally, Dean, for the town and village combo pipe fixing over here on 211. It got washed out during a storm, and I'm happy that it got replaced before the snow comes, because steel plates in the road don't work too well with snowplows, so thank you for that personally. The only thing that Jim had forgotten is we are doing our Christmas tree lighting on the 1st of December. We're actually lighting 2 Christmas trees this year, one down in Veterans Park. It's gonna be about 10 after 6 on the 1st. Santa will jump in the fire truck, and we will immediately head up to the firehouse, and that will be at 6:30, I believe, is when Santa will light the tree at the firehouse, and we'll do our festivities like we always have at the firehouse. So anyone has kids, anyone would like to come see it, please come down to that, and that's all I have for you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On to our new business. Like to get the approval for the fuel sale contracts with the 3 respective entities we've dealt with in the past: Village of Otisville, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Orange County, and the Howells Fire District for 2024. No changes in that as recommended by Dean, who handles the fuel sales to the respective agencies other than the contract dates. So we need a motion firstly for the Village of Otisville to approve the fuel sale contract for 2024.
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion and second to approve the fuel sale contract for Cornell Cooperative Extension of Orange County. Motion and a second, please.
Make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a third motion and second for fuel sale contract 2024 with the Howells Fire District.
Make that motion.
And a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I need an abstract to pay our bills, or an approval to pay our bills, abstracts 44, 45, and 46. Need a motion and second to pay the bills, please.
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kathleen mentioned in our correspondence, had a request from zoning board member Carrie Lee Carey for resignation effective December 31st, 2023. A motion and second to accept that as requested.
I'll make the motion.
And second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Got the quotes for the drywall installation today from John Fuller, engineering firm. 5 quotes were solicited, 1 bidder declined to provide a quote as they were too busy to meet the timeframe we're looking for. John's recommendation is QB Properties. This is an owner-operator, so an individual proprietor to do the installation. Cost of $5,500. Just the note John did include in his email he sent over. 2 of the other firms were much higher, as they would have to follow the prevailing wage rules of New York State. Being he's an owner-operator or sole proprietor, is exempt from those rates of pay under the laws that regulate that for the contractors. Are there any questions or comments on the proposals from the engineering firm? All right, so we need a motion and second to approve QB, that's K-U-B-I-E, Properties for the drywall installation at a cost of $5,500.
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On to our old business. Does the board have any comments or discussion for the proposal from local law, which we held over for this meeting? Does anybody want to take any action on the proposed local law?
I'm just gonna say this. I think that hearing everybody out, and I hope everybody understands it a little bit more, I think that maybe the project should go to the planning board and figure out whether this thing is even viable or not. And hearing everybody out, I respect all of you that come out to hear your opinions, so. My fear is that, back in, it was March or April, I took a ride up to Albany because our governor was looking to build 15-story condos near train stations. And I went and fought that, and bipartisanly got that shut down. But there's talk of that again. So, and what they would do is override any zoning that you have. So I just want to let you know that those are some of the things that went through our mind as well. But ultimately, my opinion is I think it should go back to the planning board. I thought with 2 warehouses, would be less disturbance than putting 8 50,000 square foot warehouses. I just think it should go back to the planning board to go through the steps, because if I'm right or wrong, it may get through and not be approved. So I think that's my opinion. I don't know what everybody else's opinion is, but.
Is there any other discussion or comments from the board members? That would be up to the board members. I understand, just my piece that Chris gave, understand the residents and the items that have been brought to our attention over the last 2 meetings. We did receive some emails, I believe, some people that were not able to attend this evening. I understand that. Again, I think from an aesthetic piece, the disturbance of the 2 buildings and a smaller footprint on that respective project would be more appropriate than the larger disruption or distribution of the property if it was developed in the 8 parcels with the 8 separate lots, to that effect. So, again, it seems to be the voice of the public that things stay as they are with the 50,000 square feet, and the process, if the owner or developer chooses to pursue, you know, through the means of the planning and or zoning board respectively as they choose to do. So, do you have any comments or wanna vote for that, Jim?
Either we vote yea or nay on it, right?
Well, so we choose not to vote, it stays as it is, or we can, do you? So, well, no action will be taken at this time, and the zoning, size of the warehouse buildings in the B1 zone will remain unchanged. Next item on our
Sorry, in
agenda.
layman's terms, is that a no, or is that just postponed?
No, there's no action, no vote to be taken. David, in terms of the local law process, so.
It could
I've not-
conceivably come up again in the future, but as of right now, the board has chosen not to take action.
With the process, David, not having fulfilled and made an approved, vote on previous local laws, we've never, in my time here on the board, not voted or not approved the local law. So if in, I'm gonna use a hypothetical number, 6 months, the town board says, let's try this again, can they just vote at that time period, or do they have to restart the process from proposal, public hearing, and then through the adoption with its respective timeframes?
Theoretically, you could vote. I would recommend a public hearing, again at that time, but theoretically, the board could vote. It's not, there aren't the same time limitations as the planning or zoning boards.
So does that answer your question, sir?
It's not trying to be difficult, it doesn't, is just a yes or no, or postponement of the vote. 'Cause I'm saying from last meeting.
Right now, it's a no.
Okay,
Is, I think,
okay. I'm just saying, from the last meeting it was postponed, right?
Yes,
So that was-
correct.
Okay, so this is not a continuation of that?
Correct.
This is, no,
No,
okay.
we've made our determination here and where it's at.
Okay.
Our next item is the vote for the adoption of the 2024 preliminary budget.
Thank
We have a motion and a second. If there's, will there be any discussion from the board pertaining to the preliminary budget and then its adoption?
Where do I need to take, you do this one, it was in front of the thing.
I could read through my comments.
Do we mention that it went down, our budget? Budget from last year?
Thank you so much.
Is that up? We're at this year? Yeah, the regular.
Correct. So Jim's question here at the board, the amount of percentage rate that the budget increased, comparison of 2022-23, just at just under 5%. The 2023 to 2024 rate of change was 3.38%. Jim wanted us to make it known that the rate of increase was lesser this year as opposed to this time last year. Are there any other comments or?
No, I just wanted to be sure that the other parts of the.
And so we need a motion and second to adopt the preliminary budget as adopted for 2024. And a second? All in favor? Aye. Move on to board comments. Jim, you have any comments this evening?
I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving back.
And Chris?
Same thing, just to everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, and remember what Thanksgiving's about. Be thankful for the people you got around you, and family, friends, neighbors. Just lost a good friend this week, who lived in our town. He's 53 years old, battled cancer. So life's too short. So enjoy the day with your family and friends.
Thank you. Amanda, any questions or comments?
I do have one comment. Earlier this year, I proposed to fill the vacant seat on the board with Carrie Lee Carey, and it was stated that we were going to wait to fill that position until after the elections as the people chose. I would like to propose to the board that we appoint Carrie Lee Carey to the vacant seat.
questions or comments for Amanda with the proposal? So we need a
Yeah, you do that in the form of a motion.
Yep, we would need a motion and second to.
Question, her resignation said 12/31.
Yeah, that would have to be altered. If the board decides to appoint her this evening to fulfill the remaining time left on the term, then the board could certainly vote to accept that resignation effective immediately.
Okay, so I'm gonna make the motion that we accept the resignation immediately from the zoning board.
So that will be our first motion to make an effective resignation from the zoning board for Ms. Carey, effective immediately. So we've got a motion from Mr. Furman, need a second? And all in favor? And we need a motion and a second as proposed by Ms. Davis for appointing Carrie Lee Carey to the vacancy of the town board for the duration of the seat, which would run through the calendar year of 2023.
I'll make the motion.
And a second for the motion. All in favor? Welcome, Ms. Carey. Ms. Davis did ask about questions that we were emailed for the pertaining to the budget. Just could answer the 4 questions submitted. The A budget has hospital and medical coverage. How many people are covered in the A budget? That's 3 employees. How did we arrive at the increased amount? The increased amount is based on the estimates provided from the insurance providers respectively, and what our projection for employees being a net zero change, and what we had budgeted current year is what would be remaining in relationship to the increase. Retirement system for A budget, fire and police, gives a $1,000 increase. The comptroller says municipalities should expect 3.4 cost increase. How is it a flat fee? The information we're provided by the comptroller's office specific to retirement, we're provided with projected invoices and then current invoices, not just the, I'm guessing from the nature of the question, a generic expectation in terms of the plan fully. We base our data on our employees, their salaries, and what is quoted from the retirement system respectively. On that, we do also take advantage of, they offer a prepayment discount, so we pay the invoice for the retirement in December as opposed to February to take care of, or take advantage of additional savings that is offered to us as a municipality. For revenue in A budget line, Community Day, or COM Day is written here. For 2023, what was the to-date value? $5,970 for those functions. 2023 revenue minus taxes for the budget is $356,205. How much was actually collected year to date? So as of the beginning of November, with our most current reconciliation with our accounts through our accounting firm, that revenue was $350,187. So I just read the response to the questions, and again, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And we need a motion to adjourn. And a second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
All right. You're everywhere.
That'll fix it. If you hit the button.